Hi everyone. Today we are going to be working with how to teach fractions to third graders. And the standard that we're going to be working with is standard 3NFA1. And it's as follows. Understand a fraction 1 over b as the quantity formed by one part when a whole is partitioned into b equal parts. Understand a fraction as a over b as the quantity formed by a parts of size 1 over b. So in this case, we are trying to introduce the concept of fractions to third graders. And as we know, fractions are just parts of a whole. We are working with a numerator, which is it represents the pieces of the whole, and a denominator, which represents our whole. So a fraction like 2/3, we have two parts out of a third. Or 3. So a couple of the manipulatives that I'm going to be working with today are great when you're working with kids and introducing them. And I always find that physical visualizations are always helpful when teaching kids any sort of new concept in math, because it's a lot easier for them to see it and work with it with their hands than just have it on a piece of paper. The first manipulative that I have are these fraction blocks. And as you can see, this represents a whole by the 1. So this represents one whole piece. And they go all the way to from halves, thirds, fourths, fifths, and so on and so forth. And what I really like about these guys is if you are trying to work with fractions, such as, when you get to the point of adding and subtracting fractions, you are able to break these guys into parts. So you're able to represent 3/4, 2/4, etc. So the other manipulative that I like to work with are these circles. And this circle obviously represents a whole, but it also has parts such as halves, thirds, and goes all the way up to 12ths. So again, when you're adding or subtracting fractions or working with problems that say like, pizzas or pies, it always helps the kids to see that in front of them. So the first problem we're going to be working with involves this manipulative with the circles. So Anthony ate 2/3 of a pizza. How much of the pizza was left? So this is a pretty simple problem for kids to start off with when they're being introduced to fractions. Anthony started off originally with an entire pizza, and he ate 2/3 of it. So the numerator tells us that he ate 2 parts of the pizza out of 3 entire parts. So we have 3 parts to a whole in this case. And I always like to do a side-by-side comparison so we can see what exactly is being done in the problem. All right, so this represents the whole pizza. And Anthony ate 2/3 of it. So since we're working with 3 parts, 1, 2, 3, to a whole, and Anthony ate 2/3 of that pizza, we'll be taking away 2 of these parts. And we are left with 1/3 of the pizza. Okay? The next problem I have, we'll be working with the blocks, and this will represent our whole. So Lydia had 1 whole candy bar, but wanted to split it up evenly so that she could have 1 piece of it for 8 days. How much of the candy bar did Lydia get to have each day if she split it up evenly? So if we have 1 whole and there were 8 days that Lydia wanted to have one piece of the candy bar. In this case, we would use the 8th fraction bar because we have 8 pieces for 8 days. So when we break it apart, we see that Lydia got to have, for 8 days, 1/8 of the candy bar. Now we're going to continue this problem by saying that Lydia didn't quite make it to all 8 days. The very first day, she decided that she wanted more chocolate than just 1/8 of a piece and decided to have 3 pieces of chocolate. So these 3 pieces of chocolate, if we put them together, represent 3/8 because she had 3 pieces out of the 8 possible pieces. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. So what did she have left for the rest of the following days? She had 8/8, or 8 pieces, minus 3/8. 1, 2, 3. And so what we have to do in this situation is use subtraction to subtract 3/8 from 8/8. So if she had 3 pieces of chocolate on the very first day, she is left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of chocolate for the rest of the days, which equal 5 pieces out of an entire candy bar, 5/8. There are a lot of other problems that you can work with these manipulatives with. You can even cut them out on pieces of paper. They're not necessarily something that you have to go and buy. You can also make pizzas just using paper plates and cut out little pieces of pepperoni, work with those. So just when introducing fractions, it's always important to have those visual representations, those physical visual representations, to help the kids out when they're being introduced to fractions. That's all.